Well then, good morning, good evening, good night. Depends what time you are joining with us. I want to welcome you to another episode of First Light, where it gets brighter and brighter every single week until about June, middle of June, and then everything starts to change again. But anyways, we're going to take it the next couple of months. We're going to enjoy the fact that it's going to get brighter and brighter every single Thursday when we come together. I want to welcome you to this gathering that we get together on a weekly basis. I want to thank you. I got thinking about that you actually are part of this journey. You know, your comments, just like there, Richard, good morning. I'm able to kind of check in and see what's happening. You get to comment and be part of the conversation as well, which I always love. So feel free to put comments in the comment section. Just say hi, and then people know that you're here. Also love when I know that we have people watching us really all over the place. So it's always great when you're not from the Chilliwack area itself to let us know where you're from. It just kind of is cool to know that our family is ever expanding and affecting more people. Good morning, Jerry. Also want to celebrate the fact that for those of you who get up early in the morning, that we are some crazy misfits that say every Thursday we're going to make sure that we're either getting ready with this in the background or we already got ready. In my case, it's probably best that I already get ready. I don't know, you be the judge, but that's probably the best idea there. But anyways, good morning, Brenda, and good morning, Linda, as well. I'd love for you, if you would, just for fun, if you would write in the comment section your favorite class that you took in high school, your favorite subject. Like, what was your favorite subject in high school there? Good morning, Anne. I was just talking about people that are not necessarily within driving distance of Chilliwack, and Anne, you're one of them. So I want to welcome you to another morning, our first light gathering. I was away for a couple of days. You may have already seen that on Facebook and so I thought it is only fair that in today's moment of silence and respect that I pay homage to the original, the Pike Place in Seattle, where Carrie and I went to the mothership earlier this week. Drama, yes, drama was a great class. I always loved when they made you lie down and imagine things. I'm pretty sure that was the high school version of nap time. But anyways, and history. I loved history as well. That's great. Whoa, Richard. This is this hidden secret, culinary arts. Wow, I had no idea. Wow, you should actually figured. Wow, okay, and Jerry, geography. That's great. That's awesome. Fantastic on some of those things. That's great. I would say that in English, everyone's got a different answer. I was going to say mine was probably history, only because of my teacher, Mr. Marquis, Monsieur Marquis, and so he was. He just made history come alive. I just always loved, getting that. And before that, I didn't really like history at all. But I shout out to Vince Marquis. He is actually a friend on Facebook, but he was my history teacher growing up in high school. So, anyways, but so Carrie and I got away for a couple of days and went to Seattle because we could, and because who knows, tomorrow we may not be able to. That's just kind of what happens. But it was a great time away and whatnot. So anyways, I am glad that you are with us now and that we are dealing with a different subject today. And maybe not something that I've seen here pop up here, but we're talking about the Bible, and we're kind of changing gears, so to speak. This is the first episode in this second season of sorts. We're kind of going this idea, our mission or vision statement is to be pursuing the person and presence of God in us, through us, and around us. And that's kind of where we are right now. We're taking this year to look at that. And so for the last, almost 4 months, we've been looking at God working in us. But now we are looking at God working through us. So let's take a moment here and pray, and then let's jump into the chat of this discussion here today. So God, I want to thank you that you are working in us. But Lord, it doesn't just affect us, but Lord, something transpires in us where it starts to flow and impact those really around us. So Lord, I pray that you would continue to work through each and every one of us, work through me today. Work through each person, not only in this chat right now, not only in those that are going to be watching it later, but Lord, for their lives today. May you work through them, and may they see the world a little bit bigger than themselves. In your name, Jesus, we ask this. Amen. All right. So, I just want to circle back. Like last week, we looked at the quintessential verse that I wanted to talk about with 2 Timothy 2:2, what I refer to sometimes when I'm talking to leaders as 222, the 222 model, which is where Paul says to Timothy that, the things that I've taught you, I want you to find other competent and committed men and commit it to them for them to teach others also. So really it's this shall I say, this Amway, kind of like MLM kind of idea that really Jesus's model of discipleship was not just to be internalized, but to really start to influence those around them. And so that's what really we were talking. So I want to circle back on our vision here, because we talked at the very beginning in week 1 of God working in us about vision, and that we want to be pursuing the person and presence of God in us, through us, and around us. And I talked about this idea, internalizing it. But I want to circle back on that, because the idea is I want to give the vision some legs. Okay, it's one thing to envision something, but it has to go for. So where the last season we've been dealing with this idea of God working in us, which is about improving. Okay. Now we're looking at God working through us, which is influencing. Okay, there's a difference here. There's the improving, which is internalizing it, but then that influence, which is now starting to externalize in a more subtle way. And I'll over the course of this season, we'll be able to address this. And I have to say that I've struggled, because I was just like, I wanted to just come in with it all. But you know what? We've got a whole season to deal with this. And so I've got a number of subjects that I want to look at over the course of the next few months as we go through this. How does God work through us, right? And so I also want to let you know that once we kind of staff up, we're in a big hire season. You'll be hearing about that, but we're kind of be in a big hire season now. And so once we staff up, then I'm going to be able to focus on, I want to do the first season all as podcasts, like as 10 minutes thing. So where we've been taking 30 minutes, you're asking this preacher, shove it down into 10 minutes, it's a kind of idea. So I'll be doing that podcast, shortly on that. But anyways, the idea here that I want to talk about here today is that we make this mistake that spiritual growth is about us. We think that God, sent his son to die on a cross so that your life could be different. True-ish, okay? It's true, but really true spiritual growth, okay? There's spiritual renewal in us. That comes when we accept Christ. But spiritual growth really needs to impact others, okay? It really should have an influence on shaping the world around you, closest to you, and beyond. But anyways, we'll talk about this over the course of the season. But when we look at Jesus and this idea of discipleship, it didn't start with Jesus and the disciples, okay? I get this mindset that God, sent his son and then, taught people for 3.5 years and then booked it and went back home to dad. No, that's not what happened. It was the idea and the concept of being that example, I key that word, example, to influence others started way back, and even Isaiah in chapter 49 verse 6, he talks about, or sorry, I'm going to start in verse 6. It says this. It says, "It is not enough for you to be my servant, raising up the tribes of Jacob and restoring the protected ones of Israel." It's not just a one for you to be like my servant, raising up, right? And even then, I was struggling, because it's talking about the fact that they have a responsibility to one another. Okay, so, but hear this. He says, "I will also make you a light for the nations, to be my salvation to the ends of the earth." See, God's blessing on Abraham, on Isaac, on Jacob, which, shout out really quietly, wait for a series on that. Anyways, but the idea of God working in Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, it was this generational thing. It was about God worked specifically with specific people, but it was to continue on. Okay, and God in Isaiah here uses the word light. Okay, so I wanted to share that the Jews, there was this two reasons why the word light was used there. And so what happens is we can use it the right way, we can use it the wrong way, we can use it one way and then that's it. And then we become a little myopic in our view, and you can see some denominations like that. You see some people's ideologies and theologies based on just this myopic view of what it means to be saved here. But God was saying light because, first off, as a beacon, okay, to get attention, to shine light on a thing, kind of like when you expose, like a doctor shines light, getting stitches, puts that little headlamp thing on. So why? So you can see clear. Okay, so the light is there, but also light to be used as a model. Okay, as a model to show this is the way, right? The church was called the way in the beginning. So it's this idea of letting others know and influencing those around and showing there is a better way. And I got thinking about that. When you idea of influencing, and let's say my light is shining on you this morning and you are brightening, I see some of the comments that you put, and then you build me up, and then I build you up, build you. It goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and they call that a laser, okay? Which I thought was really cool, because I thought, well, I wonder what the most powerful laser is out there right now. Is it Star Wars shooting out, the Star Wars program killing satellites or anything like this? But in 2015, this university in Japan, they created this laser, okay, that it was 2 billion watts. Okay, so imagine the power of 2 million flood lamps. Okay, so you had 2 billion watt laser, and it ran for a trillionth of a second. Okay, it's faster than that. Okay, a trillionth of a second, and in that moment, they were able to create enough energy in a trillionth of a second as the entire sun's light over the city of London, England. Okay, so you imagine all of the light energy coming down over the city of London. They were able to put that into the size of a human hair, that strong of a laser, which I thought was really, really cool here. But so the idea about this building one another, that's iron sharpening iron. I think that, the reason why they said that is because they didn't have lasers back in the day. That I know of anyways. Maybe the Mayans had something like that. But the idea here is that this building up one another, that it becomes an influence. So it's not supposed to be only contained inside, but it's actually supposed to do something with others. And so when we allow God, what God is doing in us to influence others, two things can happen, okay? Still using this light analogy here, that the first thing is that the others will absorb the light, okay, and it actually creates heat. Okay, that's a side effect. None of you wrote down science. I just noticed that there. Nobody put in science there. I was going to be a chemistry teacher. But anyways, so the idea of the light, which is physics, but the light shining onto an object, if it absorbs it, then it has to create heat. That brings a reaction of heat, which we can easily extrapolate. Extrapolate's a pretty big word for 6:44 in the morning, but still we can extrapolate and get to the idea of it being like growing heat. It generates something inside. Okay. The other thing that can happen is that the object can repel that light there, and actually what happens is that it reduces heat. Okay, and we see scripture about that. It says, in the end times, the hearts of many will grow cold. So we pray for revival, we pray for renewal, and believe me, there are some traditions out there that believe this, that there's no point in doing evangelism because evangelism actually stops Jesus' return, which, okay, anyways, but the idea of sharing our faith with others, well, you know what, the hearts of many are going to grow cold, so we might as well let it happen. I don't think that's what Jesus said. He go into all the world, right? So make disciples. He didn't say just let it all cool down and then I'm going to come back earlier. That's not kind of how it happens here. But so the idea here when we talk about this vision, let's come back to this idea of vision because it's, you know, I want to make sure that we're staying on track here. That with the vision, pursuing the person and the presence of God. Catch this. Our vision statement is centered on a verb. It is really centered on a verb. There's the person of God, there is the presence of God. But they exist whether we want to pursue it or not. So really what happens is that God working in us, God working through us, and God working around us is really the, shall I say, the, this is what happens early in the morning. This effect, this reaction, it is the I know there's going to be a better word. Someone could throw it in the chat room at some point, but it's this reaction, what happens, and a response that happens based on our level of pursuit, okay? So the more we focus on pursuing the person and the presence of God, we will inevitably see God start to do more in us, which really should never, that maybe freaked somebody out, you know, when you do that thing. One of these days I'll do that and just kind of look at a screen for a few moments there and freak someone out thinking I've frozen the screen here. But this idea of God working in us, it has to spill over. That is part of discipleship. If no one around you knows that you're a Christian, you need to pursue more, maybe. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to start reading your Bible everywhere and just kind of just look over here. It's upside down. Yeah, it's just look at here. And the word of today is in Isaiah 22. No, that's not what we're talking about here. I forget who it was that said that that we're to basically evangelize every single day, and if we have to use our words, right? So the idea about this is really, someone may want to Google that and throw that in the chat room. I don't care if it's later on, that's fine. I'd love to get that fact check on who said that. But the idea is that it has to spill over. It should spill over. My faith should have a light effect on everybody, even if it's repelling, even if it's absorbing, it doesn't matter, but it should be something. So the intensity of the light, whether it's 1 watt, 10 watts, 1,000,000 watts, 2 billion watts for a trillionth of a second, it doesn't matter. It should have that impact there, right? So let me be clear about this, that pursuing, when we look at the verb for pursuing, it means to strive to gain, right? To seek to attain or accomplish, right? So let me be very clear. Discipleship in its raw form, okay, discipleship is more focused on the pursuing than the attaining. We don't really attain the person of God. We really don't attain the presence of God, okay? Because we die. You know, like personally, that's another story sometime about a prayer time that I had. Maybe ask me personally about it, and I'll show you about that. That I honestly thought one time I was going to die. But anyways, the idea here is that it's about the pursuit, the pursuing of the person and the presence of God. That it's not perfecting. Okay, it's perfecting, but it's not perfect, right? So it's the pursuit there in this idea here. So the vision, here's where we come back to this idea. So the vision, to be pursuing the person and presence of God in us, through us, and around us, means nothing if it doesn't have legs, okay? A vision without some sort of implementation of the vision or the incarnation of it, the internalization of it, then it's just a dream, okay? I have some vivid dreams. You probably have some wild dreams too. And I believe God speaks through dreams. So that's probably another discussion sometime. But the idea is that if we don't do something about it, then it was just a dream. You know, the dream, oh my goodness, you know, I could go on for hours. I remember sitting down with Jen one time and I said, let me tell you what I see on a Sunday. So we sat there, I said, just close your eyes. Jen's our admin in the office. And I said, close your eyes. And I just started to explain to her what I see. And at the end she goes, wow, like that's vivid. I was like, yeah, I see it. I do see it. But I don't want to see it. I want to see it, right? And I don't want to see the work of God in me, or like in the sense of, okay, you know, I'm like the next five first lights. I already know what we're going to be talking about. I'm not going to share yet, but I'm like, okay, so I know what I'm going to talk about, but who cares if I'm teaching on it and you're not seeing it? I want to see it in my life so that other people see it. I want you to influence others around you. And that comes when you internalize what's going on. Okay, let's get back in. I need to move along. Okay, so I want to circle back to a verse that we used a few weeks ago when we were talking about bless. So we were talking about bond, build, and bless. And so bless, we looked at that 1 Corinthians 12:1 with the many parts. You know, and that's back a few weeks if you want to look back on here. But it says here in verse 4 of that 1 Corinthians chapter 12, it says, now there are different gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different ministries, but the same Lord. And there are different activities, but the same God who works all of them in each person. Verse 7 says, a manifestation of the Spirit is given to each person. The work of God, the manifestation of the Spirit, is given to each person for the common good. The common good. If you are not allowing God to work through you, then the body is missing out. Okay? So there's two words here that I want to point out, that Paul talks about ministries and he talks about activities. The word ministries actually is the Greek word diakonoi, which I just know because it was used a number of times in Bible college. That diakonoi, which is serving tables. So it would be like a server at a restaurant. Okay, and I got thinking about that, and you've probably heard that before. But this idea that there are different ministries, what then is the purpose of a minister? Diakonoi, okay, diakonoi. So what is the responsibility there of that? It's to serve others, catch this, what they need to grow. So if I go to a restaurant and I order food, well, sometimes some of the food I order doesn't help me grow, well, the wrong way anyways. But it's the server comes to meet the needs that I'm asking for. So really when we have ministries, it should be meeting the needs of the people, not the needs of the church collective, like, oh, well, we have to have a blah, blah, blah because we've always had a blah, blah, blah. No. That's not how it works. The idea is that ministries really need to help meet the needs of the people. And as things change, then we really need to always consider shifting our ministries. Secondly, it talks about activities. And we talked about this a few weeks ago. But it's translated energizings. Okay? So when we do activities, which by the way, on Saturday, 9 o'clock, I want as many of you to come out. You'll be hearing about it today. But we've talked about this heart for the home idea. So from 9 to noon, we are just going to pilfer. We're going to go through the entire building and just get rid of a bunch of stuff. I heard there's 17 couches that no one even knows what they're about. So like these sort of things, we're bringing a big dumpster. I need you there. So just, help us out with one of these activities. It's an energizing. When we get together, these things kind of build us up, right? So when we look at different things, well, it'd be based on different interests. Richard, the culinary arts. There's times where you've had events and you call in those that like to cook, like Brenda. Brenda's like a Red Shield chef, and I don't know, probably a 3-star Michelin chef, and maybe a Goodyear and a Bridgestone chef. I don't even know what all those words mean, but you guys have this thing. So let's get together, and what happens? It energizes you. These activities, getting involved in these things. So the church as a body, or discipleship as a model, is really to allow God's work in us to provide either ministries, which are opportunities to serve others, or activities, which are ways to include and build each other up, to fulfill the call of God on our lives. God's call on our life is not myopic. We are not let me put it to you this way. I don't know anybody, and you can prove me wrong, unless it's just someone becomes a Christian on a deathbed. But even still, I would say that story can have some legs in itself. I don't believe that anybody's journey is to be a cul-de-sac. Right? I don't believe anybody's journey, and as soon as we look at their journey, there should be a big sign that says dead end. Okay? No. It's kind of morbid. But the idea here is that really there should be roads that branch off. There should be lives that are impacted based on each person's life there. So when we look at this thing, what I want to say is that your own spiritual development without an outlet of ministry to others, okay, would be, what I say, equal to harvesting a crop, but letting all of that unused portion spoil, okay? It would be harvesting a whole crop and then saying, I can only eat so much, but then just watch the other stuff spoil. And you can put this in the chat room. I haven't really been saying this line at all, but here, put this in the chat room. The harvest is to feed and to seed, okay? The harvest work that God is doing in your life, when you are reaping the work of God, that is to feed, but also to seed. It really should feed you, but also seed others around you. Okay, we talked about this back when we were in this model of bond, build, bless, and you'll hear that term a number of times. But when we were talking about that, we talked about one of the things I wanted to put in there is that I said you were blessed to bless others. Okay, so you're going to start hearing a few things kind of overlap one another, and that's fine, because the second season is we're taking everything that God has worked in us, the harvest of the last 13 weeks, and now we're going to seed it. Now we want to see how do we take it to that next level there. Okay, so today's chat isn't about how to do it. Okay, it's not like, here you are 3 things to do and then you're going to be perfect. No. Thank you very much for putting that in there in the chat room. I started to get worried. I started looking at the thing like, am I talking alone here? But it's not how to do it or what exactly to do. Like, tell me, like that person went to Jesus, tell me what I must do to get into the kingdom. Well, then Jesus went right for the jugular and he said, okay, you're doing everything, but you're doing everything and you're proud of it. But you're holding on to the thing that you're holding on to, right? And he says, that's when he says, I want you to sell everything and give it to the poor. And he's like, ooh, and he says he goes away a sad man because he was very rich, okay? So today, though, is about opening your heart up to include others. This is a journey, okay? Understand this. This is a journey. This is going to take time, okay? And let me just kind of close with this illustration here. So, okay, so I did some research, and it says that if, I don't know if you know this, but everybody has these little bumps under your tongue along the bottom of your mouth, just right along your gum line. Every person has like little bumps and little ridges along their gum line, okay? So I can almost guarantee you just checked. You just checked to see what those bumps were. And secondly, I can almost guarantee everybody used your tongue to do it, okay? You just rubbed your tongue along there. I didn't tell you how to do it. You know, you didn't use your finger, which normally would use to touch things. You just used your tongue. Did you tell your tongue to do it? Or did you think about the ridges along the bottom and then your tongue just responded to that to take care of that kind of that thought that came along? This is what I'm getting at, is that everybody has a part to play. And, you know, if that tongue says, I'm unionized, I'm not going to look at all. No, you're stopping the flow of everything that could be happening in the body. So the ministries of First Ave, the programs of First Ave, the activities of First Ave, they help you enough to start helping others. Okay, so that is the difference between, as we bring this to a close, I'll bring the worship team up. The idea here is we talk about the vision being to be pursuing the person and presence of God in us, through us, and around us. But the missions are all of those ministries, all of those programs, all of the activities, the missions. Okay, student ministries, what's your mission? How are you going to accomplish the vision? Kids, how are you? Classics, every prayer ministry. Linda, you're in our prayer, heading up our prayer ministry. All of these things. How are you going to take the vision and give it legs? Because every group needs to look at it differently through a different lens. In order for, students are going to absorb differently, if we use that light model, absorb differently than the kids, then the classics, then the young family. So we have to find all of these things. So I can't do it all. And I need tongues. I need all of you, every part of the body, just helping us do this. And that's really where we're shifting things as we talk about this through this. So this idea of bonding, how can we grow things in our relationships? How can we build one another? How can we build our spiritual development? And then bless, which is how can we actually impact those around us? So, okay, here's the 701. I apologize. Okay, let's bring this to a close. First step, what I want you to do is I want you to, over the next few moments or days, think about what part do you play right now in First Ave? What are you doing? How are you allowing God's work in you to start working through you in ministries, programs, activities, and stuff? And maybe who have you neglected to let in, and who have maybe you have avoided to go bless and touch their lives as well? Anyways, let's bring this to a close. My prayer is that God will work through you and continue to work through each and every one of us. This Sunday, we start a brand new series called The Coolest Questions Jesus Ever Asked. And week one, I'm excited, going to jump right in. We also have our AGM right afterwards. Look for details on that. Can't wait to connect with you guys. Love and miss you, and I can't wait to see you on Sunday. God bless you.